All right, we are back. We got Vince Taylor here. We're going to be talking about some Vancouver real estate, man. So, how do you feel the market right now? How was 2023? What's going on?
Not even hello? Come on, man. I haven't been here for 6 months. First, hello.
Hello,
well,
Vince. How are you?
So good to be back. And hopefully we got some old listeners, some new listeners, and some exciting stuff to share with you. 2023, I'm quite happy in a lot of respects to say goodbye to that year.
Me too.
It wasn't all bad. There was a lot of things that we learned, a lot of things that we needed to remember about real estate, that it doesn't always go up and it sometimes goes down, and interest rates are what they are. And people get pretty wound up about some things like interest rates in particular, and yet it's a balancing act because, as we spoke about last time I was here, historically, sort of pre-2000 and even into the 2000s, 7, 8, 9% interest rate, mortgage rate was considered absolutely fine. Mm-hmm. And I'm here to tell you that none of us died. We bought and sold real estate, we lived in our houses, we paid our mortgages, and oh my God, how could it be 7%? Well, it can be, and well, I don't particularly like it. I liked it better when it was a little bit lower. We can talk about that more. We survived, and we will survive again, and I believe for a whole bunch of reasons, 2024 is going to see a cut of a point and a half would be where I'd go. But I have a few things to talk about because we have a scorecard since last time I was here. Got a few things right, got a few things wrong. You got to fall on your sword when you get it wrong, and you got to, take the credit when you get it right. So let's dive in.
Well, I'd say you've been pretty spot on, man. I mean, like you basically said November, and I was in agreement with that. I was saying the similar thing on social media and stuff like that the bottom was going to be November 2022. Maybe December, you might be off by a month. I'd say you're pretty bang on with that. You sent me a text 2 months ago. You said these guys got 60-day window to hop back in the market before we see things start taking off again. Yeah. Lo and behold, I'm sending showing requests for detached homes in Chilliwack yesterday. Wow. They're all 50, 60 days on market. All 6 showings I sent accepted offer in the last week. So
It sounds like witchcraft, but the longer you do it, the more gray hair. You'll get some soon enough if you stay in this business. But the one thing I think I was perhaps aggressive on, I won't say wrong, but aggressive on, was the last time I was on your show, I said we're going to see a 1% increase per month in pricing.
Yeah.
I think we've been about 6 or 7% since I've been here last. So we'll call that okay because I got some hate mail that people said, oh, you're crazy, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, fine, I can live with that. Where I was wrong was I really didn't believe that the central bank would raise interest rates twice more since we talked last. I was quite committed to the fact that wouldn't happen. Reasons why they did it, I still don't agree. I mean, they're not going to call me, Mr. Macklin's not going to call me and ask my opinion. I think it's dreadful to put the country into a recession and then reduce interest rates to try to bring it back. I have a job. You forced me to lose my job so you can reduce interest rates so I can get it back. But I already had a job. Everybody was happy. It's an election year. They're going to have to get going because to suggest that there's no conversation between the Canadian government, the American government, and Central Bank Federal Reserve is ridiculous. There's a lot of pressure on those bankers to do something because it's an election year, and every politician of every stripe, and I don't care about politics, as your listeners know, wants a strong economy. So you're going to have to see some interest rate cuts this year. If it was me, I would be doing it already. I was also on the record of saying we're not going to go into recession. I took a lot of hate mail for that. I don't think we ever did. Yeah. I'm pleased with that because the economy was so strong and the fundamentals of inflation really couldn't be controlled by raising interest rates. I think it was an absolute mistake. There are people who may disagree, but that's my position on that. So win a few, lose a few. I was wrong on the interest rates. I think they made a mistake, but I was wrong. But now we are definitely going to see interest rates come down this year for sure.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And I'm in agreement too. I thought when they raised in September 2022, I was saying that should have probably been the last one. Yeah. Everything else, because we haven't even seen the effects of all the other interest rate hikes yet, right? And the economy is already slowing, inflation has been coming down, et cetera, et cetera. So everything basically past that point was pretty much unnecessary, I would say. But I get why they did it, and it was more of, I would say, to control market sentiment. I would probably say is maybe why they did it, but I don't know.
I don't know. I think there's an old school of economics that says to cool an economy, this is the only tool that you have. And we actually went the opposite way by reducing interest rates to damn near zero to stimulate the economy, and that worked. So conversely, why wouldn't the other one work? I still believe, even though COVID seems like a lifetime ago, the supply chain issues that we had from COVID really affected inflation a lot more than people realized. And as those supply chains have loosened up worldwide, prices have come down. Look at cars, for example. You couldn't even buy a car. There weren't any. And now you talk to the car dealerships, and they have so many trucks, for example, this month, they don't know what to do with them. They can't give them away. Everything's on sale. Well, only a few short years ago, we couldn't get trucks here, so the prices went up. Now that here, the prices have come down. It had nothing to do with interest rates, everything to do with supply.
100%.
Yeah.
So I think something that's decently scary, or could be scary, I would say, is like, you know, we're seeing the market start to take off right now. I'm seeing multiple offers. I'm seeing prices start to escalate again. It seems like everything I sent a showing request to is under contract. Like, what's going to happen if they start lowering interest rates in the current state we're in right now?
My prediction, bold prediction for your listeners, like I said to you 60 days ago, it feels like you've got about another 40 days. People have missed the real window. Mm-hmm. It's going to go crazy. It's going to go absolutely crazy. The market is going to go crazy. All these people that are writing, the pundits who are writing that prices are going to soften again, it's just fundamentally wrong. There is no chance. Now, I want to talk at some point today about these new British Columbia regulations on density and so on to explain some of this. But at the same time, it's the same old song every time I talk with you or others. There is no supply. There is no possibility of us as a building community catching up. So what do we do? There's been a lot of talk the last few days, last few weeks about immigration. Never mind whether it's good or bad. Let's take that out. The fact of the matter is about 500,000 people a year for the next couple of years are going to come to Canada. But what wasn't in the news and has been in the news recently is student visas, super visas, and asylum seekers. Now, the number of people on a student visa that come into Canada are roughly another 500,000. Now, it could be as high as 800,000, but let's say it's 500. The theory is the new 500 are only supposed to come in when the other 500 have graduated and left. Well, of course, that doesn't work like that. So even if you said half those people are overlapped, the province of Quebec has been complaining because they had 80,000 asylum seekers this year alone, just Quebec. So now we have 500,000 in immigration, 500,000 in students. A super visa means anybody, any sibling of the student can come to Canada for up to 10 years. Well, if you come to Canada for 10 years, you need somewhere to live, you need somewhere to eat, you need somewhere to work, you need things have to do. So you got all these super visas. Then you add another 100,000 of asylum seekers, and the numbers are much, much greater. Now, notice I didn't say worse, because there's lots of arguments that say if we don't do this, the country of Canada can't function. We need 1 million people. But if you're going to have 1 million people, then you have to create a place for people to work and to live and to recreate and so on. That has not happened. That, to me, is the fundamental issue. When we were here last, I used the example of a theater being full, and 5 minutes before the opening of the film, the owner lets in 100 more people who are all milling around the theater. There aren't any seats. Well, pretty soon somebody says, well, I bought my tickets for $10, you can have them for 20. Somebody else says, I bought them for 20, you can have them for 30. It escalates the price of everything. Yeah. Because there simply aren't enough seats. And that's what's happening here. So locally, recently, the NDP government has tried really hard, and I'm obviously I'm not political, but I'm more right-leaning, let's say. Right. I met Mr. Eby on a panel, and he seemed like a good guy, so it's not about that. What they did is he said to me, we're going to force the cities to change their densities in and around SkyTrain stations, whatever. We don't care about the community plans. We don't care about democracy. We don't care about the people. This is just what we're going to do. That's kind of weird for an NDP guy to say that, you know. Mm-hmm. Now, the truth is, much of those densities were already occurring around the SkyTrain station. But there's one big thing that kind of got underreported. So, for example, I'm working on a high-rise, which we're going to get a shameless plug-in for at the end, in Surrey. And the parking ratio is, let's call it 1 for easy math. 1 spot for every home.
Yeah.
Under the new regulations, we can go down to 0.65. Well, that's nice, but what if you don't have all the transportation? What if you have 2 cars? Hell, what if you have 1 car? Now, when you move into Paris, London, Tokyo, Shanghai, and they say no parking, people say, no parking. Because there's a metro every 2 seconds, everybody can get around, you don't need a car. New York City. We haven't developed an infrastructure. So now I'm being asked to introduce this idea of basically no parking to more than half the building. Well, that's not going to be so easy. Like, we're not quite ready for that. And the other thing that the regulation said is if you're in a certain distance, you get automatically 20 stories, certain further distance, you get 15, and then 8 stories.
Right.
From a practical point of view, nobody's going to build an 8-story concrete building, and wood doesn't support itself beyond 6 stories. So what's an 8-story building?
Does it have to be concrete?
Well, there are no other building materials that are viable at the moment. You can talk about timber frame and some of these others, but a wood frame building made of wood will only go to 6 stories, and what happens, it starts to compress. But the elevator shaft doesn't, so a few years later you have to jump out of the elevator because the building is shrunk. So it's too heavy. So beyond 6 stories, roughly, you have to go concrete. But the efficiencies of concrete really don't work until about 20 stories because you got elevators and mechanical and equipment and stuff. You've got to build a bigger building because it still only has 1 roof and 1 foundation. Right? You just have to build more. So while I applaud the efforts, I sincerely applaud the efforts of what they're trying to do, I do find it strange that after all these years of spending time on official community plans and all this kind of stuff, that we're just going to tell the city of Vancouver, forget it, we're going to do whatever we want, we're the provincial government. I can't have it both ways. I always preach density, and I do. So I applaud and respect it, but it doesn't mean it's going to be a smooth transition. However, without infrastructure on transportation, this can't really work. It's going to be chaotic for about 5 years. But what it will do, which gets into the question you'll probably ask me next, is it will increase supply. Because now we can get to market faster. Instead of having to go through all this shenanigans, you got your 20-story building, there it is. You just apply for your development permit, you are done. Which developer doesn't love that? Okay, so why would prices continue to go up? Like, what am I talking about? If supply is going to go up, how can prices are going to go up? We just can't keep up fast enough because of the immigration numbers, some of the other stuff.
Yeah.
You and I have talked about this before, and I know you live in Abbotsford. In the city of Surrey, the estimate is 500 to 1,000 people per month move to Surrey. Let's go with the low number, because 1,000 seems crazy. If I build a 400-unit high-rise tower every single month for the rest of my life, I can't keep up. Can you build a high-rise every month? No. You can't physically construct it. You can't get approvals. Even if approvals go from 3 years to 1 year, you can't physically keep up.
No.
So even with increased supply, which is awesome, there is still absolute escalation of prices. And with interest rates where they are and more people moving in, this market's going to take off like a rocket.
Well, I'll add to that. It's too little too late too, right? Because it's like, even if you increase the density and you do all these things, that's not going to make real estate cheaper. Because the second real estate starts going down, builders will just stop building. The second it's not profitable, they just stop building. So it might slow price escalations, but it's not going to make prices go down.
I agree with that. I mean, the level of density that would be required. We talked before about, you go to Shanghai and you go up 150 stories. I was in Dubai recently. I mean, the biggest building, everything in Dubai is the biggest ever. From a scale point of view, it blew my mind. You're 220 stories up in the air in the Burj, and you think, now what if we build a Burj on every corner? What if it was 200 stories instead of 20 stories? Okay, now we'd be having a different conversation, but practically speaking, that's not going to happen here in our lifetime. I don't think we're just emotionally ready for that. But that would be the only way where density would increase by an order of magnitude that might slow things down. But to your point, if they slow down too much, the builders just wash their hands of it and say, we're done.
Yeah.
Until prices catch up.
Yeah. So
the question that remains unanswered, and maybe we'll try to answer it at the end, is where does the money keep coming from? We've been talking about how does somebody afford to live in Vancouver? We've been talking about that for 20 years. When Vancouver House came to town and it was $1,100 a foot, That was considered outrageous. I mean, this is downtown Vancouver. Fantastic building, just architecturally stunning. $1,100 a foot. Hell, everything's $1,100 a foot now. Surrey's $1,100 a foot. So where does this money keep coming from? But anyway, that's a longer answer. We probably have some other things to talk about.
Well, I was actually going to ask you exactly that question, oddly enough, because that's what everybody says. I mean, I actually had a guy call me yesterday because he's on my email list. I sent this guy like a pre-sale. It was like I think I sent him Juno in Surrey. Yeah. And this guy calls me, he just loses his mind on me after he sees the prices, right? And he's like, something along the lines of like, how do people keep affording this? This is a bad investment, blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, that's where it is now. That's where the prices are, right? And if, Surrey Preconstruction is now trading at $1,150, you can bet that's where resale is going.
It has to. And again, as you and I have talked about over the years, if you don't understand Paris, you can't understand Port Moody. If you don't understand Shanghai, you can't understand Surrey. So let's go look internationally at where these numbers are, and that means they have to be here. The cost to construct is all over the map, but let's use easy math for our listeners here. It costs about $500 a foot to put up a concrete building. And then about another $250 a foot for all the stuff, financing and architects, and we'll call them soft costs. And then about another $100 a foot roughly. And then you need another 20% on top of that to get bank financing, and probably more than that because rates are higher. Well, it doesn't matter what I think or you think or anybody listeners think. When you add all that together, you're going to need $1,200 a foot roughly, $1,150, $1,200 a foot to even get bank financing.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it. So what's our response? We make the buildings better, we make them more livable, we make them more exciting, and in some cases we make them more efficient. You could read efficient as being smaller, but I can tell you, and again, we've talked about this many times, the floor plans that we design today are fantastic.
A lot more functional.
They're very functional, and yes, they are a little tighter than Grandma's one bedroom in Abbotsford.
Yeah.
But the lifestyle, the equivalency, amenities that you get, I mean, the way that people live now, you don't have to look any further than Seattle to see where Vancouver's going on this side of things. And I'm really proud to be representing some of these, but that's what's happening. And most of our buyers are move-up buyers. So a first-time buyer, it was in the paper today, how much do you need to buy a house in Vancouver? You need a household income of about $220,000. Most people who work around this neighborhood where we're sitting today don't earn that. The average income's about $65,000 to $70,000, up a bit from $50,000.
Yeah.
So even if both people are working full-time, you're still $65,000 short of just buying a condo.
Yeah.
So what? So those buyers are out. They're renters forever, and we have to make that okay. We need a whole podcast about that. But for the rest of the buyers, where does the money come from? It comes from trading their past. You have lots of clients who bought a house, then they bought another one, they bought another one, they bought another one, now they can afford it.
Yeah.
So it comes from building wealth, it comes from moving up in the market, and it comes from inheritance. And inheritance is one of the largest transfers of wealth in the history of mankind. Yeah. There are trillions of dollars. Gray hairs like me who are at the bottom of the baby boomers, the top of the baby boomers, I'm 60, top of the baby boomers are 75, 80, they die. When they die, they leave this fancy house that they bought in Kerrisdale for $65,000. It's now worth $3 million. That's where the money comes from. The money comes from new people coming to Canada. They're wealthy, they come to Canada. Not everybody. And we welcome that. You know that I'm a terrible critic of the foreign buyers tax. I mean, that's outrageous to me that because of where you come from, you should pay more. Absolutely not. If you wanted a racist policy, that's it. And I'm on the record of saying that 100 times. I don't agree with that at all. We need, in this country, people to come from all over the place, and we need wealthy people and poor people and all that, but we have to give them opportunities. We have to build transportation, housing, and so on. And if there's ever a failure of our governments at any level, I think it was a failure to recognize that come 10, 12 years ago. But now we have to catch up.
Yeah. In 2023, I don't think I had a single buyer who put down 20%. I think every single one was either 35% to 100% cash. I don't think I had a single buyer that did 20%.
That's a sign of the times. Obviously, interest rates being a little higher, people needed to manage their payments, and people who had cash bought. And as you said, in 2023, it was crickets for a lot of that time.
Yeah.
We couldn't give things away.
Yeah.
But now the buyers have been sitting on the sidelines and they're waiting. Now they're seeing interest rates. Here's a little funny story for you. Traditionally, over 40, 50 years, when interest rates start to fall, real estate slows down. And even though it sounds counterintuitive, it's because, well, if it's 6% and it's going to 5.5%, I should wait. If it's 5.5% going to 5%, I should wait. I'm going to sit in the sidelines. We typically see buying on the first wave of interest rates going back up again because people got to get in, right? The fence sitters. That's not going to happen this time. So here's my next prediction for you. It's going to go crazy in the face of decreasing interest rates because there's so much pent-up demand.
Yeah.
It is counterintuitive. It is not traditional, but this is what's going to happen. And people who are sitting on the sidelines today saying, oh, we're waiting for that bubble, and I mean, those 10% people who say that, they're crazy anyway. There is no fundamental to support that view. You're going to see interest rates settle at about, mortgage rates settle at about 4.5%, which is healthy. I don't think we need to be lower than that. And everything will adjust around there, and away we go again.
I love it. So let me ask you this, because there is a spread right now on the market from resale value to pre-sale. Pre-sale's at a larger premium than it normally sits at, I would say, case-by-case basis, but like generally speaking, the gap between resale prices to pre-sale is trading at a bigger than normal premium right now. Do you think it's still worth it to buy a pre-construction today if you're, say, an investor?
I absolutely do. And so if you'd indulge me for a second.
Yes.
We have to spend 2 minutes on return on investment versus capital appreciation. It's a very important concept. And I'm going to dumb it down, and again, thanks for the hate mail in advance. If you have $100 and you lend it to somebody and they agree to give you $10, you get a 10% return on investment. Pretty straightforward. $5, you get a 5%. So when you're looking to buy real estate, we want to look at two components. Return on investment. Does it pay more after you purchase the home, pay the rent, pay the strata fees, do all the stuff? What is your return on investment at the end of the year? If it's higher than you're paying on the banks, it's a good deal. You should buy it. That becomes more difficult as interest rates go higher because that delta gets smaller, to your point. But there's a second component that sometimes get forgotten, and it only really works in the cities like Vancouver. You'll see people buy real estate in this city for basically zero ROI. And you think, well, why would you? Because the capital value of the real estate increases. Now I bought this penthouse apartment for $1 million. It went to 1.2. Who cares if I didn't get any rent? Next year it's 1.4, and the year after that it's 1.6. I don't care if I put plywood curtains up and get zero. I don't even want a tenant. I could lose money every year and still make money. So there's two components. Now, in a stable market like most of Canada, outside of Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, capital appreciation like that is minimal. So you don't tend to think of it. You tend to think of ROI, but that's not what's happening here.
Yeah. So
your question is a good one. How do I get ROI when prices, that delta is too high and interest rates are high and making it tough? Well, you still get capital appreciation. And it's unthinkable that you should pay $1,100, $1,200, $1,300 a foot for something that's going to go up next year. But that's been true for 20 straight years. There's 700,000 people coming here and there aren't any houses. Do theater tickets get more expensive if there's no room in the theater?
Yeah.
So you're buying pre-sale for future capital appreciation as well as ROI. And ROI is not easy, and there are some tricks which we can talk about, where to buy in the building, how to maximize ROI. But really, capital appreciation is what makes pre-sale so awesome. And I've said on this show 100 times, you should always have one or two in your pocket all the time. And there's one way in, three ways out. And that's what we love about pre-sale.
Well, I think today, even though you're paying that premium to have that contract to the pre-sale, it can definitely be worth it because if you're going to buy that resale unit today, you will be cash flow negative in a big way. You'll be out of pocket even after the mortgage pay down, depending on where you buy, up to like $1,500 a month sometimes, right? So you don't have to stomach that negative cash flow for 2-3 years. Hopefully rents are higher, rates are lower by the time you close, but also say you put down 10%, you can take that other 10% and buy like Nike stock or something like that, or whatever, right? And then you get to own a piece of real estate, but you don't have all 20% locked up in it, and you can invest the other 10%, which, you're paying GST on a brand new product, but even if you invested that other 10% in like a freaking GIC, it would probably cover that GST in 3 or 4 years anyways,
You're
right?
100% right, and that is one of the beauties of pre-sale. And then if you take it a step further, so here's a tip, and we may have talked about this before. With a big building, big tower, we typically price the building in the middle, okay? So let's say we need $1,000 a foot, to pick an imaginary number. Everything below the middle of the building will be less, and everything above the building will be more. Well, simple math says by the time you go from the middle of a 30-story tower all the way to the bottom floors are really, really, really good buy. Now, why do we do that? There's lots of reasons. It's too long to get into today, but generally speaking, we have floor jumps and views and corridors and things, and we haven't thought of a better way to do it, is probably the truth. So if you have $1,000 a foot in the middle, who buys? The investors buy the first 10 floors because your ROI, you're not out of pocket. You buy the 21st floor, you're out of pocket, or the really wealthy people buy the top 5 floors because that's premium trophy real estate. So the rich guys buy the top, the investors buy the bottom, and people who want to live there long term will tend to fill in the building. So one of the most difficult parts of a high rise to sell is floors 17 to 24 because your views are awesome, but they're not better than floor 16, and 24 isn't that much different than floor 22, but you're paying $10,000 or $12,000 more. So people come into us and say, well, why is the same floor plan on floor 24 more money? And we kind of look at our shoes and shrug our shoulders and say, because we don't know how to price a building better. Do you want it? And at some point people say, sure, fine, because the buildings are spectacular. But the ROIs don't tend to work up there, but they work really well if you're going to live there long term because of capital appreciation, right? You don't need no ROI if you're going to live there. But we get cleaned out on day one of a wood frame building on the second floor and a little bit of the third floor because pet owners want the first floor, everybody wants a top floor, and nobody wants a second floor except a guy who's going to rent it out because all it says on Craigslist is, home for rent, $1,500 a month. Nobody says second floor viewing of the garbage can. So the tenant comes and says, this looks nice, and you get the same amount of rent pretty much for every floor, but you paid a lot less, your ROI works. Right? So understanding what the podium means as opposed to the tower, understanding views, understanding how we price a building is really, really important. If you want to live there for 20 years, who cares? Pick the one you love. But if you want an ROI and capital appreciation and you really want to kill it, that's how you buy.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Brand new pre-sale launches. What, for investment, what deposit do you want, obviously? What completion do you want? What floor plan are you looking for? Where in the building do you want to buy it? What does the location of the project looks like? Like, what is your ideal scenario, I guess?
Am I an investor or going to live there?
Investor.
Okay. So if I'm an investor, I'm going to buy within the first 7 floors. Typically the first 5 floors. Because that's going to be the best prices in the building. Now, to get outsmart the investors, sometimes we put our premium floor plans just a little bit past that so they don't clean us out. So I'm still going to have some good stuff, but I have to get even with the investment community too and juggle things around a little bit. But let's assume everything's equal and floor plans are all the same from top to bottom. You definitely want to be on those lower floors. The hottest floor plan right now is a 2-bedroom or a junior 2-bedroom. Right? That's what happened. We never used to have too much success with those. Everybody wanted a 1 and den. COVID came along and people said, no, I need that second bedroom. We're going to have a family, this and that. Now, surprisingly to some listeners, and maybe not to all, 600 square foot, two bedroom and 1 bathroom is fantastic. Those plans will flip. Those plans will resell. Those plans will fly off the shelves. If they get up to be 700, 800 square feet, they're luxurious, but there's no buyer. So if you're an investor, you want a tight junior 2 where you're going to put 2 people in it who are going to rent. You want to be on the lower floors and the view is not terribly important. We tend to get a little bit of a premium for south facing, but even that is going away a little bit. What we're hearing more and more now is a building with amenities. Amenities. I don't know if we have time today, but we have to make people who live in what we'll say smaller spaces, we have to make people feel good about their lives. You can't say, well, I'm going to live here for a while and then when I get some more money, I'm going to move up. What if this was it, right? we've talked about cradle to grave. You move up, you move down. It's all in the building. The amenity packages that we are able to offer today are just mind-blowing. We used to put a gym, and it was kind of okay, and then you kind of had a party room. I mean, co-work space, guest suites, 100-inch screen, beer and honey and flowing, and it is absolutely unbelievable. So when people move in here, they're not just getting the physical space, they're getting to be part of a community that is out of this world.
Yeah.
So you want to pick a location, of course. You want to pick a building that's amenity rich, and then you want to get a nice tight floor plan on the lower floors if you're an investor.
And part of the reason why I completely agree pretty much with everything you just said, I really like the junior 2-beds right now. Part of the reason why and why you want them to be a bit tighter is actually because of our tenant laws. You can't raise the rent. So you want it to be small enough that it has a high buyer pool, but not big enough that the tenants can live there their entire lives, right? Because it helps you as a landlord if they turn over maybe every 2, 3, 4 years. That's just the reality of it. Is if you're trying to maximize ROI. Obviously, there's landlords who are just like, I just want some of my expenses paid for, right? But then there's other landlords who want to maximize ROI. The nice thing about that junior 2-bed is you're going to have that turnover more often, where you can then put a new tenant in there and up the rent to current market rates, right?
You're going to get a call. You're going to get yourself in trouble for saying that publicly. But yes, you're right. Rent evictions and all the things that go on. And what's been really interesting for me, and I think we touched on it last time I was here, we had the stress test, which I vehemently disagree with. And I understand the reason, but I don't like it. But there's no stress test on rent. So a person doesn't qualify for a $2,500 a month mortgage because our government's trying to protect us from ourselves, and ends up paying $3,000 a month rent. Run that past me again? Like, wouldn't we have been better to let that young couple or that young guy or whoever buy a house, create wealth for themselves down the road instead of spending the money on rent? Now, there's times when it pays to rent and there's times when it pays to buy, but the stress test has really changed that. I have not seen in my career increases in rent like we've seen over the last 36 months.
Yeah.
It's outrageous, and it takes a lot for me to say that because I'm a free market believer. It is what it is, and I mean, you have places and I have places and we rent them out, but there's got to be some sense of fairness. And I think that the stress test should be gone and encouraging more people to own real estate and not be forced into this situation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially if rates are at 6% or 6.5%, like, do we really need to be stress testing people at 8.5%? Like,
exactly. And again, they haven't asked my opinion, but I think any of us that work in the business full time, we see people desperate to try and buy. We see them with good jobs. We see them in a good economy, and they can't afford it, and they end up having to rent when they don't want to. Yeah. I'm not slagging renters. You want to rent? That's awesome, because this is great.
Yeah.
But if you want to buy, don't make it more difficult.
Yeah. So these multiplex things, these like 6-unit multiplex, I don't know if you have an opinion on these, but what I'm curious about is, like, do you think those are going to be a big thing? Like, do you think it'll be profitable to build those?
Well, let's go back to 100,000 foot level, singing my song that density is good. Mm-hmm. All right. If you believe density is good, then more is better than less. So if you had one house and now you have 6, that's better. Right? It has to be better. Will there be some bumps on the road as we try to figure out how these plans interlock and all the rest, and what's the quality of life and all that? Yes, for sure. But giving families and people the ability to own real estate by carving up into smaller boxes is just the way of the world. Back to Paris, Shanghai, London, Tokyo. I mean, that's just the way of the world. Mm-hmm. However, we have to also, as a society then, provide schools and recreation centers and transportation if we're going to make this work. Back to my parking comment. It's one thing to say, we're just going to say, you don't need parking anymore. Great. But I got a lot of people coming into my presentation center saying, well, my wife works downtown. I'm a contractor. I need my truck every day. You got no parking? Where would you have me park? Well, we didn't think of that. We just decided to get rid of parking. Right? Parking is very expensive, and it's important to understand that as you get deeper and deeper and deeper, a parking spot can cost up to about $65,000 to make. $35,000-$40,000 in the first level or two, but $65,000. So can I offer the home for $65,000 less? Right? Every developer's eyes went, wow, this is great. Get me the same price, but I don't have to big price. No. Because people will come in and say, all right, I'll give you $500,000 if it's got 2 parking spots. I'll give you a little less for 1 and I'll give you a little less again for 2. But pretty soon, those prices are going to go back up again. Not this year, because there is no parking. There's going to be no parking. No parking is going to be the reality of the city of Vancouver, period. And how we get used to it, how we adapt to it, how do we adjust to it, I don't know. But we will have to, because digging down 7, 8, 9 stories, you get $100,000 and $120,000 parking spots. Don't make any sense either.
No.
Right?
No.
So now what? So we could have had a bridge, and again, I'm not hacking the government. We could have had a Cassiar tunnel. They've been arguing about it for the last 4 years. Could have built the damn thing already. You can't get off the North Shore. Anybody who tries to come off the North Shore at 2 o'clock, there's no bridges, there's no nothing. We're replacing the Patella Bridge 4 lanes with 4 lanes. Like, hello? What?
What is the point?
What is the point?
Yeah.
And we're not offering you any parking, and good luck with that. So, again, if I was emperor for a day, there's things you could do. Being a politician is difficult. You're only in for 3 or 4 years. You're trying to do as much, trying to get reelected. You can't tell the truth because nobody would vote for you.
Yeah.
We're going to have to double everyone's taxes, so in 50 years they'll remember us. No, I don't think so. But that's why you see Belt and Road initiatives in China, big infrastructure projects in Russia, and everybody's hacking on Russia these days for the right reasons. But when you get people who are in power for a long time, they can make long-term decisions that we simply can't politically make here. Right, wrong, indifferent, take all that out of it. It's hard to be a politician.
Yeah.
And it's hard to make these decisions. These are very, very smart people for the most part, and they understand what's going on, but they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I say, when Mr. 𝐕𝐈 said to me, I'm going to try and make this happen, and I said, no, I don't know how you're going to pull that off, dude. Yeah. He goes, well, you watch me. Well, okay. You know what? I have to give him A for effort, and he's trying.
Yeah.
He's trying.
I think it's just, at the end of the day, they were pretty reactive to all this. They're just pretty far behind. Now it's just very hard to play catch up.
It is hard, but you can't wait forever. I mean, you can't just roll over. You've got to do something. So there are going to be new opportunities for your people listening here today. There's going to be opportunities that seemed unthinkable, where maybe we find new ways of getting people around. Maybe there's new transportation opportunities. Maybe there's car share programs that we never dreamed of. We're going to have to go and travel to other cities and see how they do it. How do you get around in cities when they don't have transportation? So with every door that closes and opens and all that old stuff, there's some really new and interesting things that are going to happen, particularly in the city of Surrey and Vancouver and the Valley, which is where everybody's moving anyway.
Yeah.
It's getting tighter and tighter and more expensive out there too, because how do people get to work?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So what's Pilothouse got going on?
Well, we're very proud to be working on 6 or 7 sort of developing projects right now, but my sort of active projects, we have a beautiful project in Burke Mountain called Amber Gate. Burke Mountain's an interesting area of town. If you've not been to Burke Mountain, you probably have no idea that it used to be a ski hill. And in fact, when you go up Burke Mountain itself, there's still ski boots and skis laying around from the 50s and 60s. But if you ask most people where it was, you couldn't find it on a map.
Yeah.
It's a really cool area, populated mostly by bears, and really new housing, and it's magical. We've got some stuff downtown, and then we got a whole bunch of stuff coming to Surrey. Probably my most exciting project. Get a shameless plug in, but it fits the bill of what we were talking about today, so it's not just about that. A new tower called Parksville 96, and it's all about location, it's all about amenities, it's all about floor plans, it's all about, we've spent, and I say myself and the development team with the vision, I mean, he's got a lot of courage and great vision, really making this a community, a vertical community where people are going to want to live, they're going to want to invest. The amenity package is just crazy, and we're not open yet, so I can't share too much, but you're gonna want to hear that name, and you're going to come and see the presentation center, which is just stunning. We'll be ready in a few days. It is the example, I think, moving forward of the kind of building that transforms a city. And without being too dramatic, Empire State Building. You don't have to tell anybody where it is. Now, if you go to New York City today, there's a lot more bigger buildings everywhere. There's fancier buildings. New York City wasn't known for that until Empire State Building came along. You just say those words and everybody knows. It became a symbol of what a city can become. And Parksville, for me, puts a stake in the ground in the city of Surrey and says, this is a transformational building. Yes, in a few years there'll be bigger buildings and they'll have fancier this and fancier that. But this building will change the way people view the city of Surrey, central Surrey, the way people live and work and play. And you talk about Central Park, we're next to 450 acres of park. I've been driving around Surrey all my life. I didn't even know the park was that big. I'm a little embarrassed to say, here it is on camera with my apology. You drive past the trees at 100K, yeah, there's some trees. 450 acre park next door where no buildings can ever be built. That's Central Park. That's New York stuff.
Yeah.
That's Plaza Hotel. That's game changing. And like I said, in a few years, maybe somebody will do something else. But this location, the amenities package, the floor plans, the designs, the thought, changes the city of Surrey from, I'm thinking of maybe moving, for those of us who are a little older, you grew up in the city of Surrey, you're like, but it's transformed entirely. And this city now is where people are going to want to live. And every day it gets better and better and better and better. And I'm just so pleased I was part of Quattro, which really kind of changed the city of Surrey in the 2000s. And to be part of Parksville, that's going to change it again in 2024, is really cool for me to see as a career thing. It's really cool.
I definitely want information on that.
It is. It's going to just blow your mind when you see it. I won't give you a spoiler alert, but it's been 24 years since I've been involved in a transformational project.
Yeah.
And that's what this one is.
No, it's so awesome. You know what's funny? I still get calls every week, people looking for pre-construction product. Everybody says the same thing. I want this, but not Surrey. And I don't understand it because I guess people don't understand what's actually happening in Surrey. And the way that I look at it is Surrey is essentially a blank canvas. And they have a chance at pretty much redoing downtown Vancouver and something like Brentwood, except now knowing what we know today that we didn't know when we built those cities.
Very well said. Very well
said.
I'm going to steal that if you don't mind.
Absolutely. You can take that, right? I mean, like all the services underground are a lot newer than, say, Vancouver's. The roads are wider. The overall canvas, I would say, is better than what we had in Vancouver or Brentwood or whatever. It's going to be absolutely insane in the next 10, 15, 20 years.
And the old reputation, it takes a little while, but I give complete credit to the mayor and councils, not just mayors and councils, who, since Diane Watt's days, really saw the vision and the power. It's not Wally. You can throw rocks at the old days and this and that, but the buildings that have come up and transformed that city, what it needs is a few more, I think, fancy restaurants, a few more fancy this and that, and that's it.
Yeah.
Place is going to go crazy. This is where people are going to want to live outside of Vancouver. You're going to be proud to live in Central Surrey.
Yeah, totally. Well, and then you look at a lot of the product in Vancouver, right? A lot of the towers are just, tall boxes, glass boxes, right? Whereas like today we're building these towers, like you said, architectural design, we're building communities within the towers with amenities. It's not just like a rectangle to live in. They're going to be a lot more intricate and, I guess, accommodating than what's in Vancouver currently, right?
Accommodating is a good word, and that's kind of, I know we're short on time a little bit, but my social conscience, if I still have one, because I told you I lost my feelings and my ego in the 90s, but I still have a little bit left. As a development community, as realtors, as real estate people, we have to make it okay for people to live in communities their whole life. We can't say you live in a condo, then you move to a townhouse, and then you buy a single-family house, or you're a failure. And that's how it was in my day. If you didn't take those steps, you were considered a failure. That can't be the case anymore. What if I just want to live in these fantastic vertical communities, and I move up through my lifetime and down through my lifetime. I start in a one-bedroom, I get a big family, end up back there. But it's got everything I've ever needed, whether I own it or rent in it. That has to be okay. It has to be okay to be proud, and the building has to be built in such a way that we can recreate and have privacy and community and a gym membership and your son and daughter's birthday party, and you can wash your dog and you can learn to play the clarinet, which you never used to be able to do in a wood frame condo because it was too noisy and they'd bang with the broom. Like, what if your kid wants to join band? Because that's what kids do, and you live in a vertical community. How do we make that okay? You don't say you're a failure. Oh, you live in an apartment. Oh, I'm sorry. That's not what's happening anymore. And I'm so proud to have played even a small part in making it okay and making it vibrant. Like, these buildings are absolutely stunning. And that's why I said, I don't want to overstate this Empire State Building, because today it's not a technological wonder. It's a statement. It's what New York could have been, and they did it. And that's what's happening in Surrey. They did it. We did it. And people are going to flock there and move there and say, I don't need to go anywhere else. Now, South Surrey is a different thing. There's projects out there and townhomes and all kinds of cool stuff that I'm working on. That's a different market. Those are not typically investor markets. I know we're geared to that a little bit in this conversation. But as you say, Surrey's a blank canvas. It's this huge landmass. Yeah. There are some absolutely unbelievable communities coming that are ground-oriented, that are townhomes and what we call urban townhomes now, stacked townhomes that are built on an underground parking garage. People might come up and say, oh, I wanted a side-by-side double garage. Okay, well, that was 25 years ago. Sorry. Yeah. What you've got is a beautiful 1,600 square foot magnificent home in Burke Mountain on a spectacular underground parking with access to the outdoors that you never dreamed of for $1.1 million. Like, hello. So there's communities like that coming to Surrey too that I'm working on. Maybe on another show we'll talk about, condos and townhomes and stacked and all those different things. Mm-hmm. But from an investment point of view, Central Surrey. And you asked me last time where, are there any up and coming communities? I think when I was here last, I mentioned Nanaimo. Nanaimo is still fantastic. And Chilliwack. I love Mission, one of my favorites. I love Abbotsford. I never thought that Chilliwack would come far enough along because of the transportation. I got nothing against Chilliwack. But how do you get to work? How do you, like the hub for the West Coast Express is in Mission. You can't get there from here. It's a long drive. But more and more I'm hearing people saying to me, I can work from home 3 days a week. COVID changed everything. I can live in this idyllic community called Chilliwack. They're getting more and more multifamily, getting beautiful homes. The prices are going crazy. You know that market out there better than I do. And I'm thinking, Chilliwack, how, what? But COVID changed that in a positive way. COVID taught us that you can work from home and be a productive member of society. Yeah. And maybe you got to go to the office a couple days a week. Okay, great. But if you had to drive to Chilliwack every day, 5 days a week, ripping your hair out 2.5 hours each way, you're not doing it.
No.
2 days a week?
Not so bad.
Not so bad. And then you can take your kid to Little League and you can do stuff on the weekend. It's the gateway to the Okanagan. Yeah. My son lives in Squamish. He will never come back. I mean, Squamish is on the other end. We didn't even know it was there. We've talked about Squamish before. We thought the world ended at West Van and you just fell off the end of the earth. Yeah. You can't get people back from Squamish. No. He goes trout fishing or salmon fishing in the morning. He jumps on his paddleboard after work, works from home, comes to the office a couple days a week, and goes skiing. Well, and he said to me, and you want me to move back to, Millardville, which I happen to like, but why would you, New Westminster where we grew up? Why would I move back to New Westminster even though it was fantastic? I can't do any of these outdoor activities, right? Totally. I can't. So city living versus some of these, it's not for me. I grew up in New Westminster. I like that community. I like Coquitlam. I like all these areas. I'm a city guy. But if you like the great outdoors, Chilliwack, Abbotsford, Mission, yeah, wow, it's possible.
Well, not even that. I think especially what you said, where it's more viable to work from home today, so there's less of a need to have to travel to Vancouver for work. But also just our economy's changing. There's a lot of ways to make money online via creating content, or people do stuff in crypto and whatever. I'm not saying everyone's going to do that, but those types of jobs will continue to increase. And not only that, Surrey, I think, will start getting commercial towers with high-paying white-collar jobs in Surrey.
I agree.
And it will be less of a need to have to travel to Vancouver. So, right now, the commute from Surrey to downtown Vancouver, well, if Surrey has, commercial towers with high-paying white-collar jobs, that'll be the same driving from Chilliwack to Surrey Central now, yes, right, as it was Surrey to Vancouver.
Very good point.
Right? So there's a lot of stuff like that, and I completely agree. Chilliwack right now, you can buy 7,000 square foot lots with homes on them in the 700,000s.
Yeah, that's right? Magic.
Yeah. It's crazy.
I inadvertently, not inadvertently, I mentioned Millardville, and it tweaked something in my mind about hidden areas. If you're listening to this and you don't know where Millardville is, it's one of those places like Port Coquitlam and Aldergrove. We've heard of them, but if you haven't been there, you think, well, where's Port Coquitlam exactly? Where's Aldergrove? Like, it's part of Langley. Millardville is an interesting little community because it's a very old French Canadian community. As part of Coquitlam, it's got its own little thing. It's going crazy, absolutely crazy, because you're seeing now giant towers there and all kinds of new housing because it's right on the transportation hubs. You pull out of your driveway, you're on the freeway, you're on the SkyTrain. So this sleepy little French Canadian place has gone crazy. Now, of course, Fraser Mills was actually a mill. My grandfather worked there as a longshoreman. And 𝐕𝐈𝐃𝐄𝐒 has taken that to a place that we didn't even dream of. I mean, this wasn't considered. Working down at the mill in the 40s, 50s, and 60s was blue-collar guys. They went home to Millardville. Well, now Millardville is this upscale community full of great restaurants and stuff, and a gateway to Fraser Mills and a gateway to all the transportation heights. And Port Coquitlam is the same sort of thing. Most people couldn't find it on a map. But when you go to Port Coquitlam and you look at the growth and you look at it and you think, this place is really cool. How did I not know about this? Like, it's tucked somewhere between Port Moody and Coquitlam, and it's sort of over here. These little communities are seeing huge resurgence because they used to be blue-collar towns, but they're not anymore. Yeah. They're communities within communities that are awesome, and we're seeing huge growth in Millardville in particular, just to use that example.
And something I've been noticing, maybe you can confirm this, I might be wrong, but to me it almost seems like Surrey Central is starting to detach itself in pricing. Like, the way it used to work is like Vancouver was the most expensive, and then you got priced out of Vancouver. You went to Burnaby, that buyer demand lifted up the price of Burnaby. Then you got priced out of Burnaby, you'd go to Coquitlam, then New West, then Port Coquitlam, and that basically waterfalled all the way down to Chilliwack. Yep. But now it's almost like Central Surrey is kind of like making its own pricing now. It's kind of because it's only trading a little bit cheaper than Burquitlam now. You know what I mean? It's starting to detach itself from that whole dynamic, that waterfall dynamic that we've always seen.
I think you're exactly right. I mean, it wasn't that many years ago we talked about, and it wasn't a very flattering term, but I said it, so I'll say it again, financial refugees swimming across the Fraser River with their possessions because you got priced out of anything on this side. Yeah. And your first bank was across the Rio Grande was Surrey. So you did your best, and then when you got priced out of there, you moved further and further and further and further, and then all of a sudden now we're seeing trading prices in Mission over $700 a foot. Well, there isn't anywhere cheap. So I agree with you. Because of what the vision has been in the last few years in Surrey, it's become a city center. And I think you've characterized it exactly right. People are going to be proud to say when they're traveling in Hawaii, people used to say, I'm from Vancouver. Oh, where? I'm from Vancouver too. Oh, I live in Surrey. Oh.
Yeah.
Now you're going to say, I'm from Surrey. Like people from Abbotsford say they're from Abbotsford. Yeah. Do you have from Vancouver? No. I live in Abbotsford. I'm proud to live in Abbotsford. I've lived in Abbotsford all my life. Like I go to Vancouver twice a year. What are you talking about? Abbotsford people tend to associate themselves more with Kelowna and Kamloops. Other than the Canucks, why would you go to Vancouver? So I think you're right. There is a shift both mentally and physically about Surrey. Mm-hmm. People, there's both a shift mentally and physically in Surrey. People are detaching because they want to live there. It is now becoming a business hub. Yeah. I wish I knew Ontario better and somebody could help me out with this. If you didn't live in Ontario, do you live in Oshawa or do you live in Mississauga? But there's other business hubs in Ontario, and that's what Surrey is becoming. You're proud to live and work there. There's no reason to go to Vancouver. You don't have to go ever. Everything you need is right here in this beautiful city, from the ocean to the mountains to the things, and you got everything. Yeah. So with that in mind, I think your observation is correct. It's detaching from price because it's not just this sliding scale of eastward travel. No. You actually landed at an oasis.
Somebody might opt into living in Surrey over Coquitlam now.
Correct.
Right? Correct. And they're not doing it because it's cheaper. They're doing it because they want to live there.
Because they want to live there. And that's why I mentioned, like with Parksville, like this Empire State Building thing, people, there's still not enough restaurants. Okay. As the people move more and more and more, the restaurateurs and the nightclubs and the fancies and the things that we need to make a really cool city, they're all going to move in there as well because there's density. Yeah. I mean, we're moving, Parksville's 400 plus homes. Wow. Well, that changes overnight. 400 people are coming down the elevator saying, I'm hungry. Where Where are they going to buy their food? Well, we need a store. Where are they going to buy some sushi? Where are they going to buy a beer? How's this going to go? We have to support this. Where are they going to get their clothes cleaned? And we don't have video stores anymore, but there's 400 people, an average 2 people per home. There's 800 people coming down the elevator. They're going to spill into the streets. And we got tower after tower after tower after tower after tower. It's like Oak Ridge. The amenities built up because there was just so many people. You know, you're selling T-shirts in the Hong Kong airport. It sounds like a crazy thing until you go to the Hong Kong airport and there's 100,000 people in the airport. You don't have to sell many T-shirts to have a good day. Yeah. But if you only grew up in Vancouver and you don't understand the scale and you got one poor lonely guy and 7 people walk by, do you want to buy a T-shirt? No. Until I started to understand the scale and the size of the rest of the world, no wonder when Amazon says we don't deliver to Canada, like, I don't even know where Canada is, get lost. Oh, I get it now because you've been around a bit. That's what's happening in the scale. I think your observation is a very astute answer.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, I think we should wrap this one up here.
You still haven't watched Slapshot. I'm putting you on the spot this time. You promised me you would watch it.
I don't know where to watch it. Where do you watch
come
it?
on. You just go on YouTube or Netflix. It's on there. And hopefully you've read Atlas Shrugged last time. I'm going to put that one back on your listeners list because your watchers list because it's really, really important. Atlas Shrugged is economically important because it was written in the 50s, but it's as relevant in 2024 as it is today. To understand the economics in a changing world is really, really, it's told in a story way that it doesn't sound like you're being lectured to in a book, but the story is crystal clear what's going on.
Atlas Shrugged.
Atlas Shrugged. And anybody who's listening that takes real estate seriously, takes economics seriously, you may not agree with every word in it because it was written in the 50s. That's not the point. That is something, get it on tape, listen to it while you drive. It's really, really important to understand the depth of the lessons that are in there. And Slapshot's just for fun because I like hockey. And I was at the game last night. Bedard wasn't playing. Oh, well. It was still fun to see the Canucks win.
Okay, well, I'll have to. I'm listening to The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy right now, so I'll throw that one on after.
There you go.
But this is Vince Taylor with Pilothouse Projects, project marketing company. I don't even think I said that at the beginning.
That's all right.
But if you're still here, I appreciate you. Like the video, subscribe, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
All right, and we'll see you at Parksville.
That's right. We'll see you at Parksville. Make sure you come and check that out. Reach out to me. I'll get the information from Vince, and we'll make it happen.